sometimes do you wish that like the apocalypse would happen just so you wouldn't have to deal with all this bullshit? He is shedding the Clark Kent. He's become, but it's a bad Superman that he's becoming. Like he's like
Superman 3.
Yeah, he's like cutting this off and like cuts his head and he's like bleeding from a head wound, but he's like shaving this off into a mullet because he wants it and he gets it. He's wanted it his whole life and he gets it. And he's like, and I'm coming for that fucking fat fucker. He is mine. And just like,
I love the idea of a mullet as a weapon.
And there has been no word from the national government on what's going to happen.
And then all of a sudden it's just,
Oh!
Greetings, long walkers. Dave here. Palmer ended up taking a somewhat spontaneous getaway with Ash before starting his new gig next week. So instead of doing a live session tonight, we're sharing part of our private hangout we had a few weeks ago that first turned into what we planned to be a King Corner roll-in, but what ended up morphing into a verbal manifestation of the movie Palmer's had running in his head for the last 9 months, maybe more. We teased it many times in episode 51, but even edited, that show ended up being over 4 hours, and not just because of the Dreaming Out Loud archive outro segment tagged on at the end. But anyhow, now's your chance to hear the Cannibalized conversation. Next week, August 22nd, we're planning on recording an episode focused on the Karate Kid saga, including and especially the Cobra Kai series on YouTube. I believe Moto's joining us for that, as well as Twinkie. So subscribe to us on YouTube and click the bell to be notified when we go live for that session. We aim to start at 8 p.m. Eastern, but as Double D said recently, on this show, we're always about 40 minutes from where we're trying to be. So best thing to do is to subscribe and click the bell for notification. For audio-only listeners to the podcast, the Karate Kai episode will drop the following week of the live stream. We're looking into getting into that rhythm, where we webcast live on YouTube 1 week, then the resulting podcast edited from that conversation posts there and on iTunes, etc. the following week. God willing, and the world doesn't burst into flames, that cycle will repeat in perpetuity. Okay, all right, enough of my own drivel. Without further ado, I turn you over to our conversation on Cujo, and ultimately the Cannibalized, by way of our King Corner segment. Honey bunny, come on over here, sugar bun. This machine just called me an asshole.
it's again long walk short drink, but basically Stephen King is basically getting this renaissance because all these people who grew up reading him are now in a position that they can make projects on his work, right?
Yeah.
And so like they have this intimate, whereas like of course, like who directed Dead Zone? Who was that?
Cronenberg. Yeah, like
Cronenberg.
a lot of really notable directors worked.
A lot of notable directors in his early work, but like they were hired because they were a notable director and this was a notable author. Not that they had this intimate knowledge of Stephen King, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we're getting like we got it because that person grew up reading Stephen King.
Yes.
And knew Stephen King and knew what they needed to get to synthesize that into an awesome cinematic experience. And I was telling Ash about this, like right now, at this moment, the sequel to It is in production. There's a reboot of Pet Sematary that has started filming, that the director has been like, if you thought the original Pet Sematary was terrifying, you don't know what terrifying is. Like, he is doubling down on how scary this edition of Pet Sematary is going to be. Have you seen the original Pet Sematary?
No, like I'm kind of inching towards that.
Most terrifying.
Really?
Like, of all the scary movies, like I was telling Ash, I was like, of all the scary movies where I'm like, Ash could totally handle this, that is the one scary movie that I'm like, you need to keep this from her as long as you possibly can. Distance her as far from this movie as you possibly can. That movie is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I watched it recently as a grown-up and it's still fucking terrifying. The book is fucking terrifying. Like, just the book is so scary. And so and they're rebooting it, and this director is doubling down on how fucking terrifying he's going to make this, right? That's in production. There is a reboot of the Stand miniseries that is just starting in writing. And listen to some of the writers that they have associated with this. Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget who the director is that's helming it. They have a writer from Westworld that's working on it. It's a 10-part miniseries of The Stand, which is going to be just the guy who's leading it showed right before their writing meeting. He had 7 editions of The Stand all stacked together so you could see their spines, like how they were released over time. I like saw it.
See this.
Like, oh my gosh, my dick got so hard. It was so awesome.
You
right?
know, I love paper and note cards.
Oh yeah. And so like,
where did you see that?
on Reddit. So like,
oh my
god, so that's in production. Amazon is rebooting the Dark Tower series as a television show on Prime, and they're going to be more. They're going to adapt the books as opposed to, I can't say that without starting. They're adapting the books. They're going to be more true to the books. All these things are happening, and this article basically is like, it's because these people grew up reading Stephen King, so they get it. That's essential. The article I sent you.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I think that we should buy a Dollar Baby and make it.
Oh, like it's a movie.
Yeah. I think that's what should happen. I think that we should like commit to like a 2-year production schedule so that like we can make sure that your projects are all like off your plate so that this isn't adding anything. We can say like, okay, this amount of time we're going to work on a script, and then this amount of time we're going to work, like, then we'll plan for filming summer of this year or whatever, and then let's make a Dollar Baby and just see what fucking happens with it, like a long march.
Actually, a great idea.
You know,
I mean, I think the one thing I would add to it is just we'll be just looser on the timeline. Like we'll just kind of work on as we're able and inspired.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to zero down on anything, but like just like let's get a really good script and like something that we can shoot, something that we know we could pull off, and then let's just fucking do it, right? Like he sells they're cheap. You can
I can't do the eye one. Eye in the hand, I can't have it.
No, that's fine.
Think about it.
That's fine. Like we'll look at the Dollar Babies and we'll see if Mrs. Todd's shortcut is one of them. Jesus,
we can find out right away. Like,
oh yeah,
it says actually, StephenKing.com. I've been looking at this recently. I actually have a bunch of Stephen King stuff. We'll just have to roll this in as like a King corner, maybe the first part of a King corner for 51, because by that time, Castle Rock will have premiered.
I asked Ash, I was like, we're about to like quadruple our income. Can we please get Hulu at the end of the month so I can watch these things? I want to watch Rick and Morty. I want to watch Rick and Morty. I want to watch Castle Rock, and I want to watch 11/22/63. I want to watch those 3 things, and you can only get them on Hulu. So
Knowing Ash, she was probably like, "Sure, babe, whatever you want."
she's like, "Yep."
Yeah.
I just screamed at you like an hour ago, and you're just like whatever you want, honey. Like, God, I don't deserve you. I don't deserve you at all.
You do. And good titles currently available for adaptation. Ready?
Yeah, I'm looking at them right now.
Let's alternate.
I want that first one.
You take it.
A very tight place.
So she said,
"Oh,
all that you love will be carried away." This is a little okay. Go ahead.
Beach World.
I don't know any of these yet. Big Wheels, A Tale of Laundry Game.
I don't know that
Milkman number 2.
Yeah. Kane Rose Up.
Don't know it. Next one, Dedication.
Nope, don't know that one. The Doctor's Case. No.
Graduation Afternoon. No.
Nope. Gray Matter. Don't know that one.
Gray Matter's from Night Shift. Maybe.
Oh, I think that is.
Remember, that's not the I one.
Here There Be Tigers. I know that one's from one of those short story collections. That's the one where there's a tiger in the boys' room. The kid has to go to the bathroom, and there's a tiger in there that eats a kid.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the one that I have such trouble with is Eye in the Doorway. Where an eyeball starts to form in a guy's hand.
Oh.
There's a lot of special effects there. We need to be closer to Jacko to pull that one off anyway.
Moving Deliveries, Muted, no.
Well, no, read the... Well, this is for the Stephen King fans to listen. So the next one after Eye in the Doorway is...
sorry. In the Death Room.
Don't know it. Next one is LT's Theory of Pets.
Yep, and the last rung up the ladder. Now the reason, and I know that people know that I've gone through all the chronology, but I've only done that on audio.
And that's a long time ago.
And also his collections of short stories, those are not always 100%.
Yeah,
because they will do a selection usually of the short story collections. They won't do all of them. So
yeah. The last rung on the ladder I kind of remember because it's, fresher for me. Maybe something like a Death's Bed type thing from Night Shift.
I do see the one that I think, if it's the one I know, if it's the one I think, this one would be a perfect one.
Ooh,
but
you want to jump to that? I realize there's
no. It's in the second column. We'll get there.
I don't know whose turn it is.
Well, here I'll just do Lucky Quarter.
I don't know it. The Man Who Loved Flowers, another Night Shift, but I don't remember it.
Yep. And The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands. That one sounds familiar, but I don't remember it.
Morning Deliveries, Milkman number 2, or no, sorry, Milkman number 1. Yep. Interesting to come after 2, but all right.
And then Mute.
Next, Nona.
And then we get to this is the one that I think would be good.
Yeah,
this is One for the Road.
One for the Road. It's a little bit
it's
related to Salem's Lot.
It's the sequel. It's the unofficial sequel to Salem's Lot, which is a short story that just, and all this is kind of like what happened to Salem's Lot, because it's a town that implodes on itself basically, and what happens to this town that disappears. And I know that is a good one.
I like a lot about this. And you know what I say too is we might even return to your earlier suggestion of an audiobook type scenario, because the trick to One for the Road is I believe it takes place in a blizzard, and especially trying to coordinate where we are from across the country. I do live in Minnesota, which could be good.
Oh no, we could make that. I mean that might be good,
but it's hard to plan around snow. So possibly we could adapt to that. But it's funny you say that, because that's when we thought about this before, that was one that occurred to me when I had to look at the list.
But it takes place in doesn't that take place in like a little?
It's like a bar or something,
or a bar or something. And so the store. I mean, we could make that happen visually without actually
small cast.
And a lot of it is told as stories. So we could do that where we're filming the stories. You know what I mean?
Right.
While the bartender's kind of telling that story. So while the sound of a storm is raging outside the bar. So
I love that. It reminds me of like The Invisible Man.
Yeah.
The opening of The Invisible Man is one of my favorite things. I try to watch it in the winter if it's snowing. It's just a weird thing of mine. Who read that one? You or me? One for the road.
I think that was me. You're next.
So Popsy, no idea what that is.
No, in Rainy Season, that sounds familiar.
Some of these sound fake.
The
Reach.
Yep. Rest Stop, I know. I actually just thought of Rest Stop as an adaptation earlier. So Rest Stop is in his latest collection of short stories. And that's the one where he gives on the audiobook, it's great because he gives an introduction to every short story. He tells you like when he wrote it, he tells you what the inspiration was for it, and he tells you what his reactions are to it.
Which collection is this?
Hang on, let me look at this. Rest Stop.
That doesn't
just after sunset. And so I mean, this came out in between the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. So like the first Mr. Mercedes came out. Yeah. First Mr. Mercedes came out, and then that collection came out. He wrote this story a while ago. So the whole point of this is there's this kid who goes to this old abandoned rest stop because his brother like dares him, he won't go to it or whatever. And he goes there and he like takes a nap essentially inside this rest stop, which has become this like hangout for teenagers to have sex and drink beer. Right. And so, but he's little, he's like 8. So while he's napping, this car pulls off onto the off ramp for the rest stop. And it's like covered in mud and looks like old and decrepit. And as people pull over to help whoever has pulled over, this car consumes them. Like as soon as they touch it, it like sucks them in and absorbs them and eats them alive, basically. And it's this honey pot, basically, that keeps sucking in these like good Samaritans to help out, and then like kills them. And the only thing that the kid ends up realizing, because he has a magnifying glass in his pocket that his brother told him was baby games, because he used the magnifying glass to like burn ants, right? And so he uses that on the car because he realizes that the mud that it's covered in, if it dries out, the car like feels pain. And so he takes the magnifying glass and burns the car to the point that it like disappears. It like shoots up into space, and you find out that it's like this alien thing that had been eating human beings, basically.
Oh my God.
It's like, it is so horrific and awesome at the same. Like these two kids watch their parents get eaten by the car, basically. Like, and the other kid who was sleeping at the rest stop saves them from getting eaten by the car. Oh man, it's so good. And just how these dumb people just keep pulling over and getting eaten by the car, and they can't rationalize it because it's a car eating people, you know?
Yeah. The thing I like about that is that it reminds me of one of the great short stories that has already been adapted by the master himself. I think Trucks.
Oh man, yes. Same thing, like right up there.
That'd be much easier to pull off as an audio, that particular one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, just hearing your retelling of it is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's good.
Which one was that? That was
Rest Stop.
The Rest Stop. Stationary Bike is the next one. Fuck bikes.
No, this one is really good too. I think I know what this one is. So this one is about, yeah, it's in just after. So this guy finds out that he has high cholesterol, right? And so he starts riding this stationary bike. I'm reading the synopsis. I'll just read the synopsis because that'll probably be better. So
I dig the StephenKing.com official website.
Yes.
Is helpful.
Yeah.
As a guide to his remarkable library.
After being told by his doctor his cholesterol level is too high, Richard Siefks, I don't know how to pronounce that name, begins riding a stationary bike in his basement of his apartment building. To help alleviate the boredom, he buys maps and plots the route from New York to Herkimer, a town in the U.S.-Canadian border, each day making the amount of miles he has ridden towards his goal. He also paints a scene of a road on the blank wall in front of the bike to help him imagine actually traveling the road. As he nears Herkimer, according to the miles plotted on his map at least, and has gotten in great shape physically, he begins having strange thoughts that there is someone following him on his daily rides. And basically, like, there's these road workers. He imagines this whole other world in this painting that he visualizes, and these road workers basically are people that he has control over. It's, man, that's I don't know how. You probably should go to Wikipedia for a good synopsis on that one.
Actually, that's the. I mean, there was a mental picture forming there for sure. That was pretty good, actually.
Oh yeah, good stuff. I think you're next.
Survivor type. I
Yeah,
don't know that one again.
The feeling you can only say what it is in French. I bet he's referring to l'esprit l'extérieur, I think is the.
What's that?
It's that
Analingus?
I wish it was analingus, and I'm probably totally mispronouncing.
Asalingus. I'm trying to remember what
yeah,
like made us laugh with. I think it was Asalingus. Sorry. I have the feeling. Oh, je ne sais quoi, right?
No.
Can't describe it.
It's l'esprit. Oh, that's it. L'esprit l'extérieur, and when you realize what you should have said when you were in a confrontation with somebody.
Oh, afterwards.
Oh. And it's called the stare spirit. The direct translation is the stare spirit. And what that means is, like, you know exactly what you should have said as you're walking down the stairs after the confrontation. And
the George Costanza effect. Like,
exactly.
And the jerk stole right out of you.
But I don't even know if that's what it is. The ultimate case of deja vu is what it is. And that's from Everything's Eventual. Uncle Otto's Truck. I don't know what that is.
Willa. Not a real story.
And The Woman in the Room.
It's a night shift one, but I don't remember what it is.
I think what's funny is if I'm remembering it correctly, The Woman in the Room it was basically the short story that King wrote about his mom's death.
Oh yeah, I clicked on the link and it does show night shift. There's no synopsis available. There are 2 comments. The first is sucks.
Yeah.
The second one is Frank Darabont made a version of this film already.
Yes. So
which means don't fucking bother.
No. So and there was an interview with Stephen King so this dollar baby thing has existed for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And when it was either Shawshank Redemption or Green Mile, because Frank Darabont directed both of those, including The Mist. So he directed Shawshank Redemption, he directed Green Mile, and he directed The Mist. Those were the 3 Stephen King adaptations that he's done. In one of those, King says, I remember, he talks about the dollar baby thing. And I only know this story from Larry. Larry told me this story.
Yeah, that's how I know, like, how far it goes back, because I haven't seen Larry in many years.
Yeah.
But he was the one to tell me about this.
Right. And Stephen King said in one of those behind the scenes things that this young kid sent me a dollar baby, because like the original point of the dollar baby was you pay $1 and you have to send a copy of the film that you make. Like, I want a VHS copy of the film and I want $1. Yep. And
it's like a little option.
Yep, and you can adapt any of this list of movies. That's why they're called dollar babies, for those who don't know. And he, unbeknownst to Frank Darabont, he had connected with that story, The Woman in the Room, not knowing that it was all based on King's dealing with his mom dealing with cancer and passing away. And King has gone on record to say, when I watched that, I said, this guy is going to direct, like, he's going to be something. And then years later, he gets a call that says this guy is adapting one of your films, one of your short stories, Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption. And it's Frank Darabont. And King remembered because that story was so personal to him, he remembered him sending in that dollar baby on it. And so, yeah, that one, you're right. Like, don't even fucking touch it. Like, it's already been done well. So, I like Rest Stop, I like Stationary Bike, and I like One for the Road. All three of those I think are good. I'd have to really dissect these other ones. I'm sure I know a good amount of them. Without The Doctor's Case might be British Lord is Murder. All Suspects. Oh, that's his. The Doctor's Case is his Sherlock Holmes. He has a short story that is Van Helsing and his sons in America. Basically, really? Yeah, and how they followed vampires into America. I have to try to remember what collection that's in, but it's this really good story about how his older Van Helsing's, because Van Helsing is like old, like really old, but he has these two young sons, and the oldest of the two thinks that his dad is sadistic and crazy and doesn't actually believe that there's vampires because they haven't found one. And then they find one, and him having to come to terms with it's this great story of, like, you know, how you think your parents are full of shit, and then all of a sudden you realize, you get old enough and you realize, holy shit, they weren't at all. Like, I was the one that was full of shit.
Yeah.
So it's a really good story for that. I wish that one was on the list. I wish
I know it was
Shortcut was on here.
My misunderstanding of the dollar baby thing for a long time was I thought that it was kind of anything was up for grabs for the short stories, but it turns out
I thought so too. Yeah, because that would be awesome. But man,
I like it. I think maybe when we get to that point where we're ready to sort of actively engage in it, whether that's, you know, a week from now, or a month from now, or a year from now, maybe we just make a little offshoot for our. You know, I know we've heard a little bit of feedback from some of our listeners. Not everyone's on board for the Dead Zone Book Club. we can make it a separate thing where, yeah, I mean, essentially this podcast a lot of times is us carving time out for each other. We could, yeah, you know, have it be a kind of a behind the scenes type thing about the development thereof.
Yeah. So
I think that's very fun. I mean, my main concern with like all the various things I'm trying to do is it's just real. I don't know. It's just a certain level of deciding upon a focus of a few things.
Yep.
Like, there was a good 6 months where all I did was long walk, short drink, but I would have it know when we were first getting started.
Yeah.
And I have it no other way. You know what I mean? But like now I'm spreading myself across a bunch of things for different motivations, and a lot of it like the anniversary stuff. I'm like, and I'm just suddenly like, I'm not finishing anything. I'm not getting, and it's just like, what am I really doing here? So like, but something like this, that a lot of those endeavors are so solitary, and so like I can't even really share them with anybody.
Yep.
Beyond the people who are in them, who often don't care that this is going on anyway. It's just like, well, let's maybe spend your time with something else that could facilitate community, other things too. Those are those. So actually, even though this sounds like another thing, it sounds like a good thing to me.
No, and I think that, you know, just like Long Walk Short Drink, we just put time into it when we can and how we can. And I mean, I totally get it. I'm not getting anything done either. You know, I right now I'm in like the website, my shop, my process into getting hired into this job, like all these things, like they're all like, you know, they're all 75%. I would say 30 to 75% at some point complete, and I'm just spinning wheels on what to do and where to go. And yeah, I totally get it. That's why I don't want it to be another thing. I just looked at it as, oh man, this is something that we both can get behind, and it's happening. And I definitely am not looking at it as like, oh, this might be our ticket, but it's like, man, everybody else is doing it. We should do it too. Like this could be really fun for us and a good excuse, a good long walk, short drink thing to do,
Yeah, I mean, I really come back. I think to a fault that I'm trying to sort out a little bit, like ticket schmicket. Like it's, for me, I know it's a little bit of a trap to try to chase attention.
Yep.
But I think what's especially healthy and good for me are the ways in which like these kind of creative pursuits can align and yeah, that's why I stopped at those 2 beers. I'm drinking ginger Pete. This is my jam. Ginger Pete sparkling water.
Nice.
Good stuff. Oh man. But anyway. But if I can facilitate relationships that are important to me through projects, that's kind of been a thing for me. So that was right up my alley, to where the product is fun, but the idea that we could do this all together is
absolutely
yeah, it's so much that's the motivating factor. I think it's great. I mean, maybe we can find ways to, I don't know, it's like I don't think there's any rules, beyond I don't think you have to adhere this much or that. There's not a lot of rules beyond the idea of these stories are not under contract for movies, which means they are available for film students who want to try their hands at a Stephen King story. If you want to be one of my dollar babies, send us your info. I don't know how much he has to approve stuff. So like maybe there are ways we can tie maybe we can find something we can tie into that idea you floated not too long ago about Twinkie and the apocalypse. You know what I mean? Like,
oh man,
maybe there's some sort of way, but the point being, it's a creative outlet that pretty much serves primarily to facilitate our own interactions, which is I'm all for whatever format.
Well, I mean, in any way to just keep it fresh. That's the other thing too, is so that it's not. I just like trying new things and let's see what we can do here, and let's go this route, and let's try this, and so no.
Yeah, and we can be smart about each other's strengths, because my strength or weakness is like I sink my teeth into something that's probably for life, for decades. We'll follow it to a fault.
Right, right. Or once I'm satisfied, I'm like, okay, let's go on to the next thing. Yeah.
But and we have other members of our kind of our cast, and our creative friends that I think we can, especially if we pool our collective powers, there's no telling what we can achieve. But there's a great breadth of different sort of strengths.
I totally can do the Twinkie. I like the Twinkie cannibal thing in the desert,
yeah.
And maybe not the desert. Like I thought about that for a while, because that's almost like too much of a direct ripoff of Mad Max or anything like that. Like I just see this story of two guys handling an extreme situation on both ends of the spectrum. Like one guy is completely unprepared for it, and the other guy has been like, I have been waiting for this my entire life, and now I am ready to shed the skin of who I wasn't, which is like where I was in society. And now that society has fallen apart, I can actually be who I am. And that person is a fucking madman. And in another person who both of them were okay once society existed, right? But as soon as it ceased, one flourished and the other one fell apart. And just how are they going to survive in this new existence, and the struggle between those two extremes and how they're interacting with each other. Like, why is the cannibal obsessed with this person that's failing, and why is this person running from the cannibal? Like what created that situation? And like, and those are the questions I can't answer yet, but I can just see it. I can just see like Twinkie as this, maybe it's like this innate fear as like a chubby person of like, if that happened, like how I wouldn't be able to run. I wouldn't be able to like, none of those things. And like, how would I survive against Twinkie? Where Twinkie obviously is like, he is prepared for that. Like he can run 5 miles. He can do all of those things. You know what I mean? And like, what would put us in that situation? How would we survive that situation? Who would come out on top? Because like right now in all of my ideas, it's like, the cannibal wins. And like what's the resolution in that story, and like,
yeah.
But you don't want to just like not let the cannibal win, because then that's cliche, because the good guy comes out on top. Like, but what's that story? Like that really, it fascinates me. Like, why is he running from the cannibal? And why is the cannibal obsessed with this one guy when he's like, society is in the process of following? He's passing hundreds of people, thousands of people, all doing the same thing, all panicking because society is falling apart. And he could give 2 shits. He only cares about this one guy. Why? Why does he care about him? Why isn't any of these other people that he's interacting with and decimating, why aren't they satiating him? Why does this one have to be it? And why is that guy running from the cannibal? Of course, the obvious reason is because the cannibal's chasing him, but I don't think that's it. I think there's more to it, and like,
this is so exciting to hear you talk about. There's 3 things that spring to mind out of all this in no particular order. One is we were talking about these various projects that I've been juggling. Some of it's like some of the sort of urgency, or like I should look at this around these anniversaries. And so I have been looking at the video footage that I have from 20 years ago, that kind of magical summer we talk about cabin kids and whatnot.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was captured. There was a bunch of stuff prior to filming the cabin concert and creating this documentary that we called Dreaming Out Loud. I guess I called that and carried that kind of moniker forward to mean all things, where you're just making the things that you want to have happen a reality.
Yeah.
Kind of stemming from the confidence I found in that group of friends. Anyway, but initially it stemmed from this. I'd done a couple like senior videos, one for I think Twinkie in your class? No, Twinkie's. Yeah. He is. Oh, crap.
Twinkie's a year ahead of me.
Oh, okay. So it'd be Twinkie's class. I created a senior video montage at the request and the collaboration with maybe someone in my class, and then next like Twinkie's class.
Yep.
And by that time I was hanging out, a bunch of cabin kids, and so I was like, we should have something like this for what kind of cool stuff we're experiencing. So we were filming stuff for the intention of like a song, but no. And early on I was calling it the One video, and it got, we've published that on our YouTube channel, YouTube's One, etc. But so I've been looking at some of that footage. There's this one thing of Twinkie I've completely forgot about, where for some reason or other we were in Sharon Center, and it was the night before Krams left for Wyoming. He went on a trip to Wyoming with his new girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal for him. And
I remember it's a big deal for all of us, because it was like, oh my gosh, you're going cross country with like your girlfriend. Yeah.
And so
what'd you talk about? Love, sex, and you too.
Thank you so much for saying that. That was a chapter in the book, and that was like to us, those were the important things. Maybe religion was in there too.
Oh, love, sex, religion, and you too. Yeah, something like I remember it was like these. It was literally, those were the like talking points of the cabin kids. Like that, we always had conversations about those things,
Oh my God. Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about that time because of this podcast. And then I've had this whole thing where like, I was just losing stuff, like the technology of VHS, this weird thing called SVHS, which was triple the resolution, but a big deal.
Remember that? Yep.
Yeah. It was like but there's been a weird thing in my trying to preserve those projects in particular where it's like super dark. There's something with the black levels. I've been having troubles. I've been like panicked trying to preserve some of this stuff. Anyway, that's why I've been spending a lot of time with it. Then there's the 20th anniversary. There's this thing with Twinkie though that I saw recently, and it was from that night. I don't know. It's like wearing a Goodwill hunting Goodwill coat, but like a raincoat, like a beige ankle.
Yeah, like a London
raincoat.
fog raincoat. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a
A
Leonard
trench coat.
Cohen, your famous blue raincoat. But like, so for some reason, I filmed this thing, and there's a phone booth, like a old fashioned.
Yeah.
Superman could run in there and changed into his uniform or whatever, or take off his Clark Kent clothes in this full length phone booth by Sharon Center in Ohio. And so I follow Twinkie to this thing, and for some reason I direct him to like pretend like you're having a fight on the phone. And I'm watching this now 20 years later. I haven't seen it, and his acting is pretty good. Like the whole time I'm watching it, he's like, no, he's like having this fight. Like all I said was like, just pretend you're having a fight on the telephone. And it's kind of like way better than it should have been. Like he really gave something. And then like he hangs up and leaves. But it was like, when you're doing one half of a conversation, there was a lot going on. Like he was starting sentences and stopping them. It just seemed like he was a little too good at this.
Yeah.
I hadn't given that a second thought. And so the idea then when you're starting to talk about putting Twinkie in a movie, both between Twinkie just looks cool. Twinkie should be in a movie.
Yeah.
And now I know.
And that fucking voice. That's a villain's voice. I mean, that's
a strong, like deep, rich voice that he could do something.
Just imagine that voice though. I mean, because here's the thing is Twinkie speaks with a lot of remorse, a lot of like humbleness, imagine that voice being completely emotionless. There's no remorse. Like I'm doing this because I want to do this. Imagine Twinkie
turning it malicious. Yeah.
Imagine Twinkie, like Twinkie's persona, but I'm doing this because I want to do this. You're suffering because I want you to suffer.
Oh my God.
But so it's Twinkie doing that. It's like Twinkie's stature. But you got to imagine him in like jeans that are like so fucking tight, and he's just like no shirt and like scratches and just he's just constantly just fucking like just always just like ready. He's just always pumped. He's just always like flexed and just like, I am at my tensile strength right now is so fucking strong that if I wanted to, just the force of me moving will snap your fucking neck. And just Twinkie always moving like that with the mullet. Like, and I want it to be like, I want the scene in this movie, like when society falls, that's when he's like, finally, and he like haphazardly, like shaves the mullet into his head, like cuts this off. And he's like, this is how I've always wanted to look. Like he's transforming. He is shedding the Clark Kent. He's become, but it's a bad Superman that he's becoming. Like he's like
Superman 3.
Yeah, he's like cutting this off and like cuts his head, and he's like bleeding from a head wound, but he's like shaving this off into a mullet because he wants it. And he's just like, finally, this is fine. This is my moment. This is what I want. And it's Twinkie's voice saying it. And he's just like, he's psyching himself up because he is in his fucking element and he finally wants it. And he gets it. He's wanted it his whole life and he gets it. And he's like, and I'm coming for that fucking fat fucker. He is mine. And just like, and like, why is he yours? Why do you need him? And like, what does that mean? And just like, it's because Twinkie is the sweetest person I have ever met in my entire life. And the idea of him being, I know he can be the best villain I've ever seen in my entire life. I know he has the potential for that. And I need to see it. I need to see it. Like, I mean, can you just see that? Like, you just see, like, he's just
now,
like,
yeah.
like, he's just like this mild-mannered guy. He's Twinkie. He's just Twinkie. But it's like he's just watching TV and he flips through and he just sees like the broadcast right before it goes to snow, you know, of like society is just collapsing on our ears. And he's just like it goes to snow and he just like reaches up and he like clicks off the TV. No words, like no words the whole time. This is how it opens. Like it's just like setting the stage. You see one click blurb that might say like,
and there has been no word from the national government on what's going to happen.
And it just cuts to snow. And he just like, it cuts to him and it's just a deadpan face. And then all of a sudden it's just. And he like clicks off the TV and the next shot is him just like a quick, like he's just like cutting hair. And at the end, it's just this ragged, I mean, fucking like just down to the scalp in some places, like mullet and a crowbar and just fucking, and that's all, like tight, skinny jeans, no shoes, like high waters a little bit so you can see his ankles, and just fucking no shirt and just a crowbar. And he's just like, I am fucking ready. Like you can just see it in his like persona. And that's the opening of the movie. Like,
oh my God, I'm in.
Yeah.
Well, there were three things that occurred to me. One is like, oh yeah, Twinkie is this like kind of secret great actor.
Yeah.
Evidently.
Yeah.
That I learned in retrospect. Two, I'm not sure what the order is of these other two. Kind of based off what you just said, like we may not need a Stephen King framework at all.
I don't think so. No, I don't know.
That feels like one of those cut scenes from the original Stand of like, this is what's happening across the country when shit goes south.
Yeah.
Then sorry, go ahead.
About those into the uncut edition. It's basically he adds all those little vignettes, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, that's great. No, I like that.
So there's a little bit of a tie there, but then that's so that sort of second point, such as it might be, is that we may not need the framework of a dollar baby. But the other thing is that if we take all of that thought you've given to that dynamic, that character, and superimpose it on the framework of a dollar baby, like I can barely remember One for the Road, but I know it has to do with vampires. I know it has to do with like people stuck in a circumstance. So I started to think of like, I don't remember what the dynamic of those characters are, but like maybe two people stuck in that place. Maybe one of them is I don't remember if there's a vampire there. Sorry. But like basically taking the underlying motivations that you've thought through so carefully and putting that as, you know, they say like in movies or whatever, like it should be that you're trying not to cry. It's all this stuff that makes it powerful that's under the surface. So if we take we have all of the armor is not the right word. We have all of the sort of psychological fireworks that you've just described, but we put that as like underlying character motivation. So when you talk about a cannibal, that could be a vampire, and the look of his character could be one of these characters that's not, or maybe they do describe it, but we don't have to adhere to the way that person looks. So it could be this weird like hybrid of either we could just roll with like this vision that you have.
Well,
that I am so on board.
You know what?
No,
but have you ever seen 30 Days of Night? Did you ever watch that movie?
I've always been curious about that though.
Okay, so it's based on a graphic novel, and it's basically like where it's the ultimate vampire playground because they go up into Alaska.
Yeah,
where
sun never rises for a while.
Where the sun never rises for like 30 days. That's the whole 30 Days of Night is where they spend an entire month in darkness. So these vampires for 24 hours a day terrorize this town, basically, and slowly and methodically pick off person by person because it's isolated. It's dark for 24 hours a day for an entire month. And they just have a sadistic pleasure in torturing this town for 30 days, right? And how the people deal with that. So the idea of him being a vampire during that blizzard and like seeing him in the snow in like just jeans with a fucking crowbar,
similar, but different to the desert.
Yeah, but I mean, a desert is a desert, right? Like technically, Antarctica is a desert, right? Like, oh man, and to see that he's unaffected by that cold, like standing, like maybe the guy goes out, he hears the whole shit. He hears the whole story about this town in the bar, right? And all the locals like feed him the story, their urban their versions, right? And maybe they all center around the cannibal. And then like the guy who's hearing the story, like One More for the Road, is just like, man, fucking locals just like fucking with me. And like, and they're like, don't go out in the storm. Like, this is you don't go out in storms like this. Like, we're all hunkering down here. And he's just like, finally, he's just like, you guys are just trying to spook me. Like, I'm going to go to my hotel. I just have like 10 more miles to make it. And like, he goes out and fucking, as we've seen these vignettes of the quote unquote cannibal, there he is standing like ready in just his jean, like the snow, like coming across, like it's so bad, it's horizontal. And he's standing there like in his jeans, and that's it. Like no shirt, unaffected by the fucking snow. Oh my God, that's powerful. That's that's powerful. Oh, I'm gonna have to listen to One More for the Road one more time.
I think that is, yeah. Well, I'm not 100%. Is that an audio?
I have so much, Dave. I have so much shit I need to do that I've promised I would do that I can't start writing the script, and I'm gonna start writing the script because this is. Too good.
You gotta follow. You gotta follow the muse.
This is like the whole like scene of him like seeing the fall of society. Like you could totally tie that to he's watching Salem's Lot fall, and he's like, I could fight the vampires.
It's Salem's Lot.
I could finally be a vampire. You know, like
we could tie it into the universe. Without having to say it. You know?
But then all the stories that those locals tell about One More for the Road, maybe that's the like one type 2 vampire that survived Salem's Lot. You don't know about type 1, 2s, and 3s.
I also started to think about the kid. Like the feral nature of this character reminded me of the kid in The Stand, like that guy.
The Stand or the Blood Meridian. What's the kid?
Oh from? Yeah, Toadvine and the kid. No, the kid being like at. Unfortunately, one of the few things I remember is like it's the sexual component between him and Trash Can Man at one point.
Oh, like, yeah.
Like a maniac.
Yeah.
But I always sort of pictured him like I kind of pictured him. I kind of like in the recent It. Henry, the psychopath. He's got a mullet and he's a maniac.
Yep.
Anyway, that's probably not the right avenue, but I like this idea of it being sort of we can allude to parts of the larger whole of the Stephen King universe by maybe silently having it start with that moment.
Well, and we could pay homages. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like we without necessarily doing a Dollar Baby thing.
We could do that too, because that's a fun way to legitimize it.
Yeah.
And it could be like the framework could be liberating is not exactly the right word, but an interesting thing to where we can the very rich world that you've concocted and detailed here could somehow be applied to this other thing. So it would be so much more than what would be expected of a beat for beat, costume for costume, line for. It could even still be line for line, but if it's informed by that much subtext of this whole other thing that's going on,
right?
Could be like I don't know, it'd be really distinct and interesting.
Have you ever seen The Postman? The movie The Postman?
Actually, no. My best recollection of The Postman is the time in which it was discussed on Palmer's Picks.
Awesome. So there's I feel that Waterworld and The Postman, like Kevin Costner, really like those two movies essentially ruined his career. And I don't feel they should have. I think they should have escalated him. I think Waterworld was fantastic. I loved it. I think people just really had a hard time that much money got spent on a movie. I think that when you really dissect all of the complaints about Waterworld, it was, I can't believe they spent this much on a movie. They wanted it to fail because he had spent so much money. And then The Postman, it was almost like the same thing. Like, well, he spent all this money on this post-apocalyptic thing, and now he's spending all this money on another post-apocalyptic thing. And it just was, I feel like The Postman failed because they made Waterworld fail. Both of those were fantastic movies. And God damn, Kevin Costner was so great in both of them. Like, he was so good. And The Postman is great, not just for Kevin Costner's performance, but actually Will Patton, the guy who reads a lot of in the last 8 years, he's read a lot of Stephen King's audiobooks. He read the entire Mr. Mercedes trilogy. Yeah. He read a couple other ones.
I think he read Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep. Yeah, he read Dr. Sleep too. He's in The Postman. And there's this great confession that he does to Kevin Costner's character, because The Postman takes place in a post-apocalyptic world. You don't know what happened in the world. You just know society fell, right? The society as we know it fell. Mm-hmm. And at one point, so Will Patton's character leads the Army of 8, which is essentially like the bandits of this new world that exists. He leads them. And he has this moment with Kevin Costner where he said, "Do you know what I did before the world fell?" And Kevin Costner is like, "No, I have no idea." He's like, "I sold," which is funny because this makes me think of Yojimbo too. It's always made me think of Yojimbo.
The movie?
He sold, he's like, "I sold copy machines." That's what he, like, and that, like, there's this big moment where he's like, I sold copy machines and society fell, and now I run an army. Like that's essentially like he's like, it took society falling for me to reach my potential. That's the message that he's trying to deliver, is like, it took the sacrifice of all of society for me to get to where I am. And he's okay with that because now he gets to be who he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's the fucking cannibal. That's like, I'm trying to synthesize that into that one conversation into an entire movie. Like, I want to see those moments with that guy where he realizes, I don't sell copy machines anymore. I run fucking armies. That's what I do. I want to see that moment where he realizes that. Like, I want to try to, like, that to me, that's a fucking movie. Not like, of course, The Postman is awesome. I want to see you transition from that copy salesman into this army general. That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Like,
and, oh my God.
Yeah.
I want to see you make this movie. I'm going to help make it happen.
Yeah. So, and that to me, that is the cannibal. That's like, I've been waiting for this. Like, and it comes from a personal thing for me where, there's this Tool song called The Wave, I think is what it's called. And it's just basically like, I wish the wave would come in and destroy California, to just like that, because the world, like, what would the world be if that was gone? Right. If that, what would you do if all that, like, all this shit that you've built on a house of sand, basically, all it's going to take is one wave to wash it away. And that's really what's going to define what a human being is, what a man is, and all those things. And so there's this guy that I taught with for a while at which I don't care. You can beep that or not, because they're closed now. But
now you're free to be who you want to be. Like,
yeah, where we used to say, like, I finally had because we kind of would talk about stuff, and we really liked Tool. We really liked a lot of different things. And I finally said, I had the balls to say to him one day, like, sometimes do you wish that like the apocalypse would happen just so you wouldn't have to deal with all this bullshit? Because then you could then there would be no rules. You could do whatever you wanted to do. He's like, every day. I'm like, God, me too. God, me too. Like there's like, seriously, I like at least once a day, I'm like, please just let this be the day. Let this be the day the missiles fly. Let this be the day the zombie outbreak happens. Let this be the day something, so I can stop dealing with this bullshit that doesn't matter. And I can just get down to surviving, because right now everybody's trying to sell me what I'm doing is trying to survive. This is bullshit. I'm playing somebody else's game that I don't like. I want to play the real game. That's what I want to do.
I'm going to have to officially say, like, this is way more interesting than $1, baby. Like, you got it all there.
Yeah. Like, and
there's so much, like,
and that, so that's the two characters. So that, like, so if you're faced with that situation, there's going to be two ends of the spectrum. There's the cannibal and there's the cannibalized. And which one are you going to be?
And we don't even have to give people names.
No.
It could be just like almost no exposition.
The villain, the victim, like you could apply anything to either one of them, right? Like, and that's the other thing too, is like the cannibal suffers. He he doesn't, yes, he's winning. Yes. Like all those other people that I'm talking about that he interacts with, he might cannibalize those people too. He doesn't care about them though. That's just fuel to get him to the cannibalized, which is that other guy, the other end of the spectrum. That's all he actually cares about. And it's this. And how does that one-sided mentality, how does that affect both of those ends of the spectrum? Because, the cannibalized, he only worries about surviving. And what is he giving up for that survival? The cannibal, what is he giving up to get, he might be passing ample opportunities to not be a cannibal, right? Like, you don't have to be this way. He chooses it every time though. Oh man, there's so much to this where it's like this counterplay, and I just see this ebb and flow of scenes that are like, the guy running makes a choice, and then how does the cannibal interact with that same choice later on down the road? You know what I mean? Like maybe this guy is running. He interacts with people. He has a choice. I could kill these people because they're going to tell the cannibal where I went, right? Or I could let them live. The cannibal could get to those people and be like, I could kill these people and eat them. I could find out which way the other guy went and then eat them. I could just let them go. But it's this like, oh man, I just see like there's no clear cut at the end of the day. And this is where I struggle with, like, how am I going to pull this off? At the end of the day, there's no clear cut villain and victim. Like, you end up finding that both ends of the spectrum are actually a circle that just came back together. You know what I mean? The guy running is doing awful things to try to survive. The cannibal is like, he might be just letting people live. He's doing things that like the other guy might not have done because he just has that one-eyed goal of like, I just want this one guy. That's all I fucking want, right? Like,
what's crazy is I had a conversation with a colleague today where he was talking about something that I'd not actually heard in filmmaking, where the first shot of a movie, I don't know whose philosophy this is, but the first shot of the movie tells the whole story.
Yeah.
So does the last shot of the movie.
That's Lost. That's Lost is what that is.
Really? Oh, sure. Yeah. But I think less in the sense that they're the same shots in a way or whatever. But like in this instance, like you could do a similar thing with the full circle where it's like one part starts with one guy, one part ends with one guy, and in a way, something about the similarity of those shots, wordlessly, can sort of say that thing about how maybe they're the same, or I don't know. It's just like rife for. Oh man,
can you see it? Like, can you see
I can
all?
feel a lot from what you described, and just hearing you tell it. Oh man, there's a movie there.
Yeah.
And there's a cast there. Like you've talked about it basically between you and Twinkie of being those two guys. Like, it's not like we even need to be. I mean, that's achievable. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I mean, like because part of it is like out of necessity. It's like, okay, how can we make a movie with like the people that I know would be willing to make a movie, right? And like, okay, so there's this, and the mullet, like it totally inspired me. Like Twinkie, and I love how like Twinkie loves that guy comes back to Mad Max. Like that, I swear, he's just like
he's JCVD. It's amazing,
exactly. And so it's like, in the heat, like when we saw him in Colorado, in Des Moines, like he's just got that like cut look of somebody that just like who could just go for 100 miles and still kick your ass. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and like. And I want that. Like that's the whole and that's the premise of the movie. Is it all is going to culminate to this one last standoff, and who has the strength to come out on top of that standoff? But here's the problem. But if the movie comes off right, you don't know who's going to win in that standoff. But regardless of who wins, they could be perceived as the hero. They could be perceived as the victim. They could be perceived as the like villain. They could be perceived as like whoever. You don't know who's gonna win. You think it might be but I don't even want to say, but it's just like it culminates into this standoff of what are we gonna do with this opportunity that we've been given. You know, like, I mean, because you could see the fall of society as like, that would be awesome, right? Because then we could rebuild it and fix all of the problems. Or we could totally just accentuate all of the problems we already have and make them worse in that situation. And it's like, and there's merit to both of those. Like, whether or not you want to admit it, there is merit to both of those. I mean, there's something there, right? Like I got something there.
Yeah, I just don't get so fired up. And then like I mean, they say interested is interesting. So like someone's really passionate about something, it's easy to get sucked in.
Oh yeah.
That's also so like you're super excited about it, but you're also like describing a thing and like I can see it and it's interesting. Like I haven't seen that story, and even if I had, like, there's ways to make it original, but I haven't. So
yeah, man, I gotta get cracking on that.
Well, we can work on that stuff together. I mean, and right here we got a lot of it down. You know what I
mean? I was just thinking. I was like, I need to listen to this when I'm not drunk because there's been a lot of really great ideas that have like. I came into this conversation just picturing Twinkie in just jeans and with a crowbar chasing me across the desert, but then like that image of him like watching it and like smiling and like turning off, like after the broadcast fall, and he like just turns off the TV, whereas most people would be like, oh, what do we do? The TV doesn't tell us what to do, and he totally knows what to do. He's like, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, and seeing that sequence as you described it, like where you're basically just watching him. Like I can see it so clearly. Like you're hearing the TV, but this slow pushing on him. And actually, I had this. There's a shot of me in a movie Larry made, where there's a phone ringing, and there's some context to it that I actually don't even quite remember. But he does this slow push in on me as my face just kind of like glazes over, and it's kind of funny because. Just hit the microphone. At the time, he and I both loved Boogie Nights, or found it funny, and or I come to find it funny. I don't know that I definitely did not at first, but I have anyway. But he's like, this is like he's describing it to me as the director. He's like, this is like that scene in Boogie Nights where the firecrackers are going off, and like Mark Wahlberg is just sitting there, and it starts to zoom in on him, and he like zones out, and his lip starts to kind of curl, and you don't really know what he's thinking, and so. That was kind of what I was going for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then the production company that he created at the end is literally a still frame of that moment from Boogie Nights. And you hear him say, like, from Boogie Nights, that's right, when he like rubs his dick. Anyway. But like I was kind of picturing that through our own weird microcosm lexicon. But on Twinkie, hearing the broadcast and seeing the look on your face that you were like kind of channeling from your own mind. And I'm like, and that's so amazing because it says it all. Like you don't have to say anything. You have the news report.
Yeah.
But you see the look on his face. The camera kind of maybe pushes in on him. And then it's all on his face. And then he leaves the frame, but you know everything. Like you know, like
what, and there's no explanation on what caused society to fall. It just fell.
Yeah,
that's all that matters to him. That's all that matters to him.
Like finally.
You know? Yes, finally, you know, and that it speaks to that, like this feeling. I mean, I still carry this sometimes. There are some days where I'm like, maybe today's the day that the nukes fly, you know, like, and I can just give up all this bullshit, you know. And
yeah, there's something to that too. And like, just as a root of where a story comes from, even if that's not the story, but like, yeah, so much of like what you described is like the best. It's both like a great pitch, like a great pitch meeting, but also if I heard someone interviewed about a movie I hadn't seen yet, and that was the interview, I'd be like, I gotta see that.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, Twinkies who like the cannibal is who I picture who I'd want to be if society fell. But I'm pretty sure my character is exactly who I would be if society fell.
And that's a lot of us, right? Like
yes.
Identify with one or both of those people in some way.
Yeah.
Probably
and that's what that's what's great about it being both ends of the spectrum is like it's like you can relate to both of those characters like completely, you know.
Yeah, and I thought about like, you know, even a title of like The Cannibal and The Cannibalized, or a title of The Wave, or, you know, like all these things, like they start to present themselves as like great metaphors and vehicles through talking about certain. Yeah, you got a lot going on there. It'd be so exciting to see through in some way.
I gotta get a treatment put together. Fuck.
But we could do all that together. Like, you know,
I don't want to lose that. I just saw this idea of let's just fucking make something. Let's ramp this up to 11. What could we do at 11? Like we're at like 8 or 9 right now. What would we look at? What would we look like at 11? And I gotta let me find you. And this is a great J.J. Abrams TED Talk. Have you watched that?
I don't know if I have, but I think I'm aware of it, possibly. Maybe even through this show, or maybe I watched it because of this show.
No, I talked about it. It's the mystery box. It's the mystery box, and it's his TED Talk. He equates this out. Oh, cancel. What do I want to do? I want to do the chat. He basically talks about how he has this I see you back there. She's back there peeking.
Tear it in here.
So there's a YouTube video link I sent in the chat. Just you don't have to watch that right now. It's like 20 minutes long. If you've seen a TED Talk, I mean, you know TED Talks are already awesome.
Yeah.
But this is J.J. Abrams, who is somebody that is near and dear to both of us, giving a TED Talk. He equates it to his creative process is how he has kept this magic kit called the mystery box. He got it when he was a kid. This is how I like it's stuff like this that makes me wonder, like, these people were destined to be who they were. I could never be this kid where he got this thing and he never opened it. It was more important as a kid. it being the mystery box was better than whatever was inside of it.
Oh, wow.
So he still has it and it's still sealed. And he's like, and if you think to Lost, remember, there's an analogy that Ben Linus gives or somebody gives where it's like, imagine there's a box somewhere on this island and it could be anything you wanted it to be. Right. And they say that somewhere in Lost, and then you hear him give this TED talk. It's based on this fucking toy that he has. Where he's like, I never opened it because it was more special to me thinking that it could be anything inside there than whatever was in there. It was more important to me to know, to keep it as the mystery box. But he ties all of that to, there's no excuse. If you want to create, there's no excuse in this day and age to not create. Basically, that's his message. It's so easy for you to be able to rent the equipment and to watch the internet, to learn how to use it, to be able to create anything you want to create. So stop making excuses and just go out and create. And it's a great message when we're sitting here talking and dreaming about making a movie together. But like, that can't, like, man, and don't you just want to see Twinkie run around with a fucking crowbar and jeans?
Yeah. Well, now I want to like be a part of making that happen.
Yeah.
And that's like the whole thing with the dreaming out loud thing that we always talked about, that is the moniker for so many things that we've done. Because like, especially, I feel like you can do things on your own, but there's, whether it's like needing someone else to stand in front of the camera, you need kind of some willing participants. You need a little bit of like a band. You need a losers club to like rally behind. Like, it's important
and
to find
somebody to keep you in check. Like, it's not just that. I don't think that you need supporters. I'm not worried about supporters. You can always find supporters, right? You need somebody that's just willing to be like, well, what about this? To be able to say, I hadn't even thought of that. That's where I think the importance of collaboration comes in.
Help you. I mean, that's one thing I think that I've noticed, like in studying a lot of musicians' careers, there was always there's the person doing the thing, and then there's Kevin Smith calls it this to take it out of the musician realm. Kevin Smith calls it the battery. Like, Scott Mosier for many years, his producer was the battery that helped like energize, like help him make his ideas happen. Like you get excited about something. But if you're just like by yourself, you don't even want to tell anyone about. So the whole thing about dreaming out loud, it's like you're like making your, you make those things and you make them. And that's a special thing about our group of friends, is that we've been doing that since we all started to get to know each other and
supportive of it and excited for it. Yeah, you're right. Like, that is important too, is to have those people.
A lot of it is about the people too. And then, like I was saying, where I'm working on all of these different things, and it's hard to know what. I was like, I need to focus on some things and complete them, and rather than doing like just a little bit in all these different areas. But a lot of times, what in the best case scenario, there's this one thing that you can't help but do, like. Your focus is, you don't have to decide on something because it's the thing you can't ignore. And so I guess I haven't had a strong enough thing I can't ignore outside of long walk, short drink. Enough to like be able to like say, hey, like I'm having to sort of debate with myself, like what to devote that time to. But when something like this comes up that can't be ignored, it's kind of great, because like it's that thing where whether it keeps you up at night or whatever it is, or is the glue that makes sure you see your friends, and like whatever, that's an extra exciting bit about this idea. It's like that fire under your butt right now that I can see is there. That makes me excited, and it's like, well, we don't want that to go away. This stuff's all going to be there. No one else is going to remaster Dreaming Out Loud or finish the documentary that I shot about myself in 2015. You know what I It's like that's just gonna be there.
Just think of the documentary you'll get to make about the making of the cannibal. Like,
yeah. I mean, that's all so exciting. I can't believe I had no idea we'd get to such a place in our King Corner,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty happy about it.
cannibal or cannibalized? I like the idea of the title being cannibalized. Like,
Oh, that too. Yeah.
yeah, like, and just I mean, because in essence, the cannibal has been cannibalized by society, right? Like they've eaten him up, and this is what they've spit out. Is this society has created this cannibal? They've cannibalized this human being into a cannibal, and like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, because it's like me versus Twinkie. So I have like, you want to say, oh, well, like, Palmer outweighs Twinkie by like 200 or 300 pounds, probably 300 pounds. He outweighs, so like you have that advantage, but then you have like the fight club, like skinny guys fight until they're dead, right? Like, so it's like, who would win in that? Like, there's no way you could like even picture like who could win in that scenario, and just like, and pitting those two archetypes into this adversarial role of survival, and just while society is falling around down their ears. I love that idea of they are dead set. One is dead set on survival and one is dead set on consumption, while society is falling around down their ears, around their ears.
It's easy to imagine in some ways, like I said, all of us would relate to one of those people at some point in time, maybe sometimes both. So in some ways it is two sides of the same coin. It's great Joker, Batman, that kind of stuff to where, and in a short film, not in a feature too, but especially in a short film, we no exposition, no answers. It doesn't matter. Like it's just enough to like present the question in some way. Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting.
Oh man. So
I have other King stuff, but I feel like if that is a role in King Corner is pretty great. And then
what other King stuff do you have? Let's hear it, man.
Well, I did.
I finished beers. I'm in here. I'm in for the long haul.
All right. Too, not that we should adhere to it, but there's something fun about one more for the road and the long walk, short drink sort of idea of like the drink, but whatever that does it.
Listen, we don't have to make just one movie. We can make two. We can make multiple movies, right? Like we could do the Dollar Baby thing and do one more for the road, and be totally. We could just make one more for the road, right, as a movie, and then make Cannibalized, and be working on Cannibalized.
Cannibalized sounds so exciting, though.
I know
that's the one that you're on. That's what I mean. Like when you're trying to pick projects, like I think basically, like I like the idea of doing a Dollar Baby, but you set on someone fire for Cannibalized.
Yeah,
that seems like the way to. That's
man, I know. Like and it's just this idea. It's so beautiful and appealing to me. It's just the pursuit. Because pursuit already creates anxiety, especially as like a big person being pursued, because you just already have the stigma of I'm not going to outlast my pursuer because I'm a big person. I don't have the longevity to do that, And so how would I survive being pursued by Twinkie, who could probably last for days without stopping, and what would I resort to as the cannibalized? Like, who would I sacrifice? Who would I, like, what would I be willing to do? Because I obviously am outmatched in just stamina, right? Like, what would I be willing to do?
Maybe you've been preparing for this too. Maybe you've been waiting for this too in a different way. Like maybe you've been scared of it, so you're super prepared.
Oh yes, that's a totally shit. Like I've totally sucked into like the Fox News idea of it, right? Like a fear, like living through fear. Whereas like Twinkie's like totally living through opportunity, And what is those two? Oh man, fear versus opportunity.
Well, and it's interesting, or I don't know, interesting, but you had sent me that thing this morning about True Romance and how that initial Quentin Tarantino script. Actually, that was his first script, and it is in that same kind of non-linear storytelling that you might.
He's
see
always
in a
been
novel,
Tarantino. That's what's so awesome. Yeah.
Well, in a way, like yes and no. That I think that was where he found his voice. I remember him talking on a talk show about his first attempt to make a movie, and I thought about this kind of recently, actually. The Blue, where he's like, it was amateurish. He's like, and not in a charming way. Like this thing I tried did not work.
Yeah.
Before he made Reservoir Dogs and stuff. But his script for True Romance, he didn't make. Tony Scott, right? Yeah. And we've talked about Tony Scott on this show before, and True Romance is such a goddamn gem. But yeah, the as a movie as it was produced in what 93, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So it was from his script, but so he was talking that clip you sent me about the dramatic the dramatic implications of the structural organization that he had initially presented. So I listened to that like 6-minute clip, and actually we should tweet that out with I think we'll include this at some point in probably 51, where he talks about like this happens and then this happens. And what's interesting about that organization of events is like, I think the first thing is like you see Clarence and Alabama meet in the bar, but then it jumps to like maybe Drexel, some shit going on with Drexel, and then you see like Alabama. I don't know. It's weird. Like you don't get the background of like why Clarence murders Drexel and all this. You kind of, there's a different game being played with the audience's understanding of what's going on and whether or not, say, Clarence and Alabama are good guys or bad guys, or there's more to it than that. I'm not doing a great job of encapsulating it, but it was pretty interesting about how it changes when you just change the order of events in which things are revealed, like where the audience is in their understanding or perception of these characters. And so when you're talking about like the cannibal and the cannibalized and not knowing who is the villain and who is the hero, we could fuck around a lot too with whether or not any of that's ever revealed, but just like at the order, the way that you see certain things.
Yeah.
And in some ways, like it could be that the cannibalized like seems like the victim because he's preparing in a reactive way to protect himself, seemingly.
Right.
But and the cannibal seems like this like sort of villain, but maybe it's not so clear cut. I don't know. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. But
I mean, I could see the cannibalized like sacrificing people to the cannibal to try to like slow him down, or and maybe these sacrifices that the cannibalized is willing to make to ensure his survival. Maybe it's implied that some of those sacrifices were people that were important to the cannibal, and this is retaliatory, but then later on you realize, nope, the cannibal is just a fucking cannibal and he just wants to eat that guy.
Yeah, and it's just random.
It's just random. And like, this is the one that like got away, and so he's going to pursue him. I want there to be that question. I want there to be like, is the cannibalized, did he do something to bring on this wrath? Or is it just a random thing that the cannibal is just, I have pegged you as mine, and I will not stop until that is true.
Oh yeah.
Like, and I want that. Like, I want that. The one thing about the cannibal that is crucial is he is a Michael Myers-esque unstoppable force. It doesn't matter what the cannibalized does. The cannibal just stomps right through it. Like he just keeps going. He's an unstoppable force of pursuit. That
it's so exciting that dichotomy too of the cannibal and the cannibalized. Like that seems like a great title because there's all the things we're talking about. It's like there's so much room for discussion about who is the cannibal and who is the cannibalized potentially.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, this is exciting to have been rolling around in your head.
No, I don't think any post-apocalyptic movies fall into two categories. 6 months after the apocalypse happened, or the moment it's happening. Nothing takes place while it's happening, while that fall is happening. Like you see the moments that lead up to the fall, you see 6 months after it. I think Fear the Walking Dead is the closest, and I haven't even watched anything of that show.
That one's like starts when it starts, like that little like
takes
the
place
movie.
in the weeks between Rick getting isn't that supposed to take place between like Rick getting knocked out and Rick waking up? Like that's where that was the idea of
maybe that was
Fear
the
of the
idea. They've strayed a little bit, but it starts with everything is normal. It's a little bit like the 2004 Dawn of the Dead. Where like
okay. Yeah.
Whereas when you the show The Walking Dead, like somebody wakes up from a coma, that's a little bit like the beginning of 28 Days Later, where but in a way, like is it 78? The original Dawn of the Dead, like takes place like they go back and forth to the newscasts as it's kind of devolving.
Yeah. You're right.
There's few people, but they're in this like secluded
Even the
place.
retelling of Dawn of the Dead does that because they are still watching the news broadcasts in the mall and everything. You're right. That is kind of like it's straddling that moment. That is literally the dawn because there's night and then there's dawn and then day. And
I feel like day seems a little after, but all of what it's such a great springboard for in some ways like this blank slate of a do-over, but obviously one that comes with all of the baggage of whatever came before. So like that cannibal has been waiting to become the cannibal. He's had to wait until it happens.
And you have to watch The Postman because you'll see that scene and you'll know it's a scene that really stuck with me where he's just like, do you know what I did before the war, before the fall? I don't know if he says the war or the fall, but you know what I did before the fall? No, I have no idea. Like he doesn't like Kevin Costner. He's Kevin Costner. He doesn't even give a fuck. And the guy's like, it's so awesome. And like he just plays it so like, God damn, it's such a great movie. And then Will Patton is just like, he's just like, I sold copy machines, and I'm just like, that man waited. He waited for he was waiting for this to happen. He's one of those people that it took the fall of society to be successful, and that's the cannibal. Like I want to see that movie of that man realizing his potential in the fall of society.
It could also be the cannibalized. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
That's like making too much of any of it, and we might have to make some choices. But that's kind of interesting. I mean, the idea of the people reaching some sort of potential, but is it kind of their best self or not? And does that
and at
matter?
What cost did it take to reach that potential? Which is another commentary on
that's stuff we all
society
have to deal with.
Anyway. What's the cost of your potential? What are you willing to do to meet that potential? What are you willing to let fall for that potential?
And I sort of hate the just posing questions without answers sometimes, but there that idea of potential, like in a society that is not falling apart, where things are made really clear. Life and death type of stuff, but like who's like, is that it's this idea of the potential, is that something that like you even really want, or is that something the thing that like been projected on you that you think you should want? There's a lot of interesting things there.
So this is like we'll end this conversation on the cannibal and the cannibalized. Now, working title. I like that title.
Yeah, that's an intriguing one for sure.
Yeah. I thought about because everything has a fucking twist ending. Is what if at the end though you realize like society hasn't actually fallen, and these two guys just like. These two guys just they just like fell for it. It's like almost like a War of the Worlds-esque type
hoax or something.
Hoax.
Yeah.
That just pushed these it was just the catalyst that these two men needed to break. And then you find out that at the end of the day, like there was actually nothing. Like they were going to find an excuse to break.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. And that's the psychosis part of that. I wish that society would fall so that I wouldn't have to deal with this bullshit. And it's like,
yeah,
if you wish that enough, your brain will make that happen and you'll buy it. And then what awful shit's going to happen then?
It's nice too that it's not the cop out of like, oh, it was all just a dream. You know what I mean?
It
was more like this actually did happen.
Yeah.
But it didn't need to or something.
But
it was always going to happen. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So I mean, I don't know. Like we'll see. But after watching all the behind the scenes stuff of Swiss Army Man and seeing all the different iterations that they went through of that story, I love that like this conversation is happening and then that we're recording this so that when we actually make the cannibal and the cannibalized, we can come back to this first conversation and be like, look at what we thought this was going to be. And then look at what we have and how awesome it's going to be, like, oh man, because it's gonna I feel like there is a ton of potential there. This is a great story that I think people could relate to. And I don't know, like I don't know. There's a lot there.
I almost just said the same thing at the same moment. There's a lot of great layers, a lot of good enthusiasm.
Yeah,
man, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, God damn, who doesn't want to see Twinkie running around terrorizing me in jeans with a mullet and a crowbar? Those are his two weapons, a mullet and a crowbar. And just like
I love the idea of a mullet as a weapon.
Intimidation, pure intimidation.
Yeah.
Like if you just imagine seeing Twinkie just not ripped, but just like, I take care of myself, right? Like, and that's kind of where he's at, and just like skinny jeans. So they're just like, so fucking tight. You're like, how does that guy fucking breathe, right? How does he not have to piss all the time with those that tight? And
it sounds like he's that tightly wound.
Yeah, they're a metaphor for that. They're why he's so angry and upset is because his jeans are so like. It's like, dude, if you went with cargo jeans, you might like carpenter jeans or like just loose fitting, straight leg something, boot cut. Maybe. None of this would have happened. It's those fucking jeans that are doing it. So they're a metaphor for how wound up he is, like how
I like
right. That. And then a crowbar that's almost as tall as he is. Like it's just one of those big like crate opening crowbars. Like, how does he even have the arm strength to hold it up, let alone hurt people with it, right? That big of a crowbar. Like I want an obscene. Why would you pick that as a weapon crowbar? That's how big I want it to be. But he fucking wields it like a samurai sword. Like,
yeah.
Just like, so he's so adept with it. You can tell he spent time doing karate in the garage by himself with that crowbar. You know what I mean? Like,
it's awesome. One and two, like I'm almost imagining it because of the weight and stuff of more like a bow staff. Because it's so heavy, you got to use two hands and operate it that way.
Yeah, but he's so adept with it. That's what I meant by samurai sword, not actually like using
just
it
the
like
skill of it. Yeah,
he's
So he
just
could do that
adept.
too.
Like he's just like, because he's only, that was what he had. That's what he liked. And that's what he like. That's what he went and beat his heavy bag up with while society was doing its thing in the garage. But now that society's fallen, he doesn't need a heavy bag anymore. He can fucking go after the cannibalized.
Yeah.
He can go after that motherfucker. And he's gonna, like, this is what he's been waiting for. The heavy bag was the cannibalized, but now he doesn't need that anymore. You know, like,
There's so many like fun things to or I mean, like, I'm just remembering the time that I like broke my not my heavy bag, but like
Yep. And imagine that with a crowbar, like a big fucking crowbar. So what other King stuff? Tell me about what other King stuff.
I finished Cujo.
What did you think of that?
I really enjoyed it. I think I missed the story, missed the stories. And it was I got the movie right after, and I really dug the movie. The
like, movie is actually really well done. It's a great King. I think those early King adaptations are really well done because they're like, here's a best-selling author, here's a young director, just do whatever you want. And I think after that, they really tried to like zero in on the commercial success of this is just a King adaptation, and just didn't want to put any money into it. These other ones, you know, like Cujo it's really well done, except for the mom from E.T. She just screams all the fucking time. Like, shut the fuck up. Like,
but I was so impressed with her too. And I actually didn't even, I don't know. I was really on board for it. And then there's a special edition I got, and so there was commentaries and stuff. But and if you think about it, in some ways, Cujo, but similar to like a courtroom drama or something. Like, there's not a lot of different locations and stuff. So, you know, it's at a certain point, she's trapped in the car with the kid, menaced by the dog. Here, I actually have notes for this.
And for those listening, if this makes it to any audience, like, this continues the Castle Rock saga. So, like, the same sheriff who was in the Dead Zone. He is still the Bannerman. He is still the sheriff in Cujo of Castle Rock, the fictitious town that King has created, just like Derry. The namesake of the new Hulu show that is starting at the end of this month. And I love how King tells the Castle Rock stories through the perspective of the sheriff's department. And you'll see that as you're going through the chronology. This is another, like, Dead Zone, again, like, it kind of tells that portion through the eyes of the sheriff's department. Cujo, it touches back to that sheriff's department. Needful Things is centered, like, one of the main characters is a sheriff. It gets to the point that when you start interacting with Castle Rock, there's an aspect of the sheriff's department, that the Castle County sheriffs that it comes from. So Andy Clutterbuck, is he a minor character in?
Sounds familiar.
And I think that he is a minor character in the Dead Zone. He's a minor character in Cujo. He is a deputy in Needful Things. Needful Things takes place explicitly in Castle Rock.
Okay. I've got that.
He's the one that, like, I'm gonna make this shirt. This is gonna happen. So if this happens before, like, if this makes it out to any audience and the shirt ends up getting made, I'm gonna sue you. Just so you know, the
tattered shirt that the cannibal will wear before he goes completely shirtless.
But it's gonna say Andy Clutterbuck for Castle County Sheriff, because he finally makes it in that same Just After Sunset, that collection of short stories that the rest stop, that I forget what that story is, but Andy Clutterbuck, you finally find out, makes it, like, he becomes the Castle County Sheriff. And so I want to make a campaign shirt for him running for sheriff, because he's always the deputy, and then it's finally this short story that he is the actual sheriff, and you're like, poor Andy Clutterbuck, man. He's put up with like a serial killer, a killer dog, a fucking demon like Satanist who's like taking over his entire town, and he finally gets to be sheriff, and you're like, poor Andy Clutterbuck, like he's seen all of it. Like, so man, that's awesome. So you enjoyed Cujo though? You liked it?
Yeah.
Like,
I guess we could give it it's a pretty simple story that even I think I could synopsize where you have it's centered around a family that lives in Castle Rock. You have well, hopefully it's not. I mean, you have a housewife, and you have a young, toddler aged no, maybe a little older than toddler. I don't know, 7,
5 or 6.
5,
Yeah.
5. I think you're right. Yeah, 5-year-old kid, and then an ad exec from maybe not exec, but like a guy like a madman, I guess, from New York who moved to Castle Rock to raise the family, and then the wife is beautiful but frustrated and bored, and she ends up having an affair with the local kind of poet slash like tennis guy, but not a local guy.
Restorer, like doesn't he like weird shit?
Yeah, and he's sort of actually more like he's not really central to the town, but maybe passing through. But so she's having an affair, and the guy's business, his local, his Castle Rock, struck out on his own in Castle Rock from like the big city in New York to try to make a business with his his colleague, and that's not going so well. And so there's some stressors in their marriage and whatnot, and they have a Pinto car that's not working so well. At the begin, and then this dog Cujo that becomes a central sort of a central character, but also kind of a metaphor for like their problems. They go to get the Pinto fixed at this kind of farm mechanic.
Anybody who's ever been in a small town, there's the one redneck guy that will fix your car better than anybody else for dirt cheap. Like that guy exists.
Yeah.
I knew that guy in Rittman. Like that guy exists in just about every small town. There's somebody who can fix your car better than anybody else, and he's only going to do it for beer money. And that's essentially who this guy is, right? Like,
yeah, Joe Camber. And so
Joe Camber.
Yeah. Initially they go out to kind of meet him, and they meet his wonderful Saint Bernard dog, who's really good with his kind of 5-6-year-old son or whatever the hell. And but by the time they come back, by the time the wife comes back with the car to get it fixed by Joe Camber, that beloved Saint Bernard had like chased a rabbit into a bat's, into a cave where there are bats that bit him, and he's become rabid. So it's a rabid Saint Bernard,
120-pound dog. Like he's a rabid,
big motherfucker,
120-pound Saint Bernard dog.
Yeah. And then like a lot of that family had gone out of town, and basically that rabid dog takes out a neighbor and takes out Joe Camber himself. And when Donna and Tad, blank on their last name, the mother and son, while the father's trying to fix his business out of town, they're trying to sort out their broken marriage. She's got a lot of guilt. She feels a lot of guilt. The son has been he's been like having these nightmares and stuff that I think are kind of, he's sensing the tension in the house and projecting it into like a monster in his closet.
The boogeyman, even like it's manifested into a physical boogeyman that lives in his closet, right? Like
and there's this great thing about the monster words. His dad comes up with the monster words that ward off monsters from hurting his son, and his son holds them to be very sacred and effective, when of course the father is just trying to placate him in some way. But
to the point that they try to use them on Cujo, right? Like don't
kind of, or at least the kid thinks that they'll protect him. And the wife feels that that she's being punished for her transgressions. In this broken down car, they go
and that's crucial. Really, they're being punished for buying a Pinto. That's really
Yeah. But
Yeah.
they go to they barely get the Pinto to the farmhouse to get it fixed, and no one's seems to be around because the dog has gone rabid and killed them, and some of them around town. But anyway, they become trapped in this car and menaced by this dog. And I guess, spoilers, obviously, always
For a
on
40-year-old
Moment for a
movie.
Drink. Yeah, and book and all that. In the book, the wife, I hate calling it, why am I calling her the wife? Donna gets she gets mauled by Cujo. She gets bit, and she survives and is able to kind of kill him with a baseball bat. But Tad dies from like the heat and
Yep.
I don't know, panic attack, or you can't die from a panic attack, but
That's
the
the
kid
book.
dies.
In the movie, he does not.
He does not, yeah. So I really dug the book, and there's a thing in the book too. So the sheriff's office is involved, and it really opens that idea. The boogeyman is real for the people of Castle Rock because of Frank Dodd, the serial killer that we know from the Dead Zone. Yeah. And so that's pretty cool. And then actually, I guess an implicit but sort of explicit thing to call back to our book club. I guess the Sheriff Bannerman sees the evil in Cujo as a manifest. He sees Cujo's. He sees that as he's like, Frank, this is Frank Dodd come back to haunt us. And actually, Bannerman dies. Cujo kills him.
Yep.
But yeah,
this is also the book. Just for anybody listening, if this happens to make it anybody, this is also the book that is notorious for being known as the book that Stephen King does not remember writing. This is the book that he wrote it while he was in the literal peak of his addiction of drinking scope and alcohol and drugs and cocaine and anything that he could put in his body, he was essentially consuming. And then his family had an intervention. He went to rehab, and when he came out of rehab, there was a like proof of this novel that he supposedly did not remember writing, was Cujo.
That's what he says in his on writing.
Yeah, he was so fucked up he didn't remember writing Cujo. And I heard he also regrets that the kid dies. That
was part of what I learned from the behind the scenes of the movie, was that Stephen King was given the opportunity to write a script, and he did. And then I think it was like too long and stuff, but he in that script even didn't have Tad die.
Yeah.
And so then they went through. It was kind of similar to like something like Firestarter, when I was like, there was a 1, 2, 3 of those like 3 novels and movies right around the same time. Like they came out in short succession.
Firestarter, Dead Zone, and Cujo. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. And Cujo actually too it like breaks from that psychological, like Firestarter and is about what pyrokinesis in some ways, and the Dead Zone about telekinesis. And you got Carrie and all that. There's a lot of that through his early work, and he seemed to break free of it here.
Which was and that was and I mean there is nothing supernatural about this story. It's a dog.
That's right. Yeah,
it's a dog that's very powerful. It's big. It's a Saint Bernard who gets rabies, and by circumstance, this mother and son get trapped in a standoff with this dog. That's, I mean, there's at the root of the story, there's nothing supernatural to it. There are supernatural associations that characters make, like Bannerman makes this dog is Frank Dodd. That it just so happens this dog is happening in Castle County, and Frank Bannerman has to deal with it. That's his, as a character, reaction to this dog. But again, as far as a King story goes, there's not. Yes, the kid deals with the boogeyman. I think that if I remember right in the story, it is left ambiguous. You are left to make your own decision on if that boogeyman actually existed or not.
Yeah, that's true. They kind of like little things like, oh, the furniture is moved around, and the parents are like, oh, it's that, but we never really know.
But you're really left to make that decision on your own. But the root of the story is all tangible. It's a dog with rabies and a pinto that won't start. And you know, 120-pound dog with rabies could do a lot of damage easily, you know. I remember the story causing a lot of problems for the breed Saint Bernards. Like when this, I remember my mom specifically telling me like there was a lot of stigma that came with Saint Bernards because of the movie Cujo. Which the breed is notorious for being a loyal and friendly dog, like not a vicious dog.
Which is I think part of the interesting thing. And like in the book, like there's a bit of an inner monologue for Cujo, and it describe and some of it's from his perspective at times. And, you know,
which is why I love the book a lot more than the movie, because you get those pieces, those small vignettes of like what Cujo is thinking, which is why King is a great storyteller, is he gives you all angles. You get to see all of it, you know. Like, I gotta piss again.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I can always piss. Let's do that.
You go piss and let me come back and we'll finish Cujo and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
All right.
So I have not very many notes I could run through about the movie.
Yeah, no, please. Let's talk about him. This is a great King's Corner.
Yeah, oh my God. Probably our best. So yeah, I'll just throw these out. Some of them might be points of discussions, others less.
Now, in all fairness, I have not seen this movie in probably 5 years. At the very minimum, it could be longer than that. So,
oh yeah, I definitely figured longer ago. And it's just one of those things, like this is all stuff I missed. And I really, one of my favorite things about the Stephen King pairing of like, I mean, there's the books and stuff are all great, but like the impact on popular culture, like this is all stuff I've been aware of. And then to get to see the movies, especially the movies that were produced around the time of the novel. So they're kind of period accurate.
Sure.
I love seeing the movies after, and it's great when they're faithful, because I have all that other subtext about what Cujo's feeling, all this stuff.
Sure.
And this was another one where they, similar to like Firestarter, they had in this instance, it was a Stephen King script. Then they moved somewhere else. And then eventually, by the time it was produced, somebody went back to the book. And so much of the dialogue is from the book. So most all the scenario is really very, very similar. So it's just like seeing it come to life. It's really fun for me. So
I feel like Pet Sematary is the last one of those. Like,
so I'm so glad to hear that it is one of those. I'm glad to hear that,
because Pet Sematary came out in the 80s.
Yeah.
And Pet Sematary, the book, came out in the 80s. So I'm going to pair the, like, if they came out in the same decade, they're in the same time period. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a little tricky, like with The Stand, because like that one that's a very 90s feel to that TV movie, where it's 70s book.
Yes, and those don't match though. I don't think they match.
Not as well.
Running Man is kind of a stretch, but I
That's
feel
my
like
next one actually.
yeah,
is
Cujo.
that.
Well, the book and the movie are drastically different from each other.
I've heard that. Yeah,
Yeah,
like almost have nothing to do with each other. I don't know how true that
no,
is.
that's not fair. I don't think that's
Oh,
fair.
good.
I think they have the same premise, but they are both great in their own right. I love the Running Man movie. I
Oh, good.
love the Running Man book. They're like, the Running Man book really has the same feel of all the other Bachman books. They're unremorseless. Their heroes usually don't win. You know, the Long Walk, he didn't win at the end. Like he's
No, not really.
psychologically broken.
Yeah.
And Road Work, he didn't win at the end of that book. Like
Right. Yeah.
he created his problem, you know. Running Man is a little different. He didn't create his problem. He definitely is reacting to the environment that he exists in. Both of those things, though, do a great service to the message they're trying to deliver. I think is the best way to say it.
Look at it, Stephen King.
Oh man, that's one of my favorite pictures of Stephen King. Actually,
Really? Yeah.
yeah, I love that, like the bearded king and like,
Yeah. He was looking like Coppola and making Apocalypse Now, and
yeah.
you know,
So
obviously heavy from all the drinking that he was doing. And I love this cover too of Cujo, because once you get to that iconic scene of him coming out of the fog, it's
yep.
it's so cool. And then they do a great translation of that for the movie. But
I remember really liking the adaptation of the movie compared to the book. I thought they did a great job with it.
yeah, it felt like the book. Like I literally finished the book on one day and I watched the movie that evening.
I thought Carrie was that way. I thought The Dead Zone was that way. I thought Firestarter was that way, and Cujo was that way. I think when you get to Children of the Corn, I think you'll feel. I felt that was that way too.
Yeah, that one was okay. I didn't love that. It was Salem's Lot was nice for me. You know,
I have not watched
the
the TV version of that. I need to watch that. You know, honestly, like I have not been through Salem's Lot completely sober. I need to listen to that.
Yeah.
Like I need to listen to it and just hear it as it is. That's one of those books that I feel like there's a number of King books that I feel like I have attempted multiple times, and for one reason or another, I just didn't make him through them, and to the point that I have other books, you know, where I've absorbed them in the same way. And
that was only
one
my
of those.
second. Yeah, so I was like that was literally like I liked Carrie. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Number 2 was Salem's Lot.
Yeah. So what else? What other King stuff you have?
Maybe I'll hit some of the. I mean, it's basically been Cujo for me, but so I'll hit some of the a few notes about it, and if something sparks, we can talk about it. Otherwise, it'll just be a little tidbits. Came from Taft Entertainment, who also produced Monster Squad.
Nice.
The DP for the movie is Jan de Bont, who would go on. He's shot a lot of things, but he went on to like become a director. He directed Speed stuff.
Okay.
Really great work in this movie. Was a debut of the kid, I think, from Who's the Boss. the child actor for this, whose name escapes me, was really excellent. A lot of the cast talked about like he was like working with a 30-year-old who just so happened to be whatever, you know,
wow,
age he was. Let's see, Ted. Complicate. Oh, there's a nice adaptation touch where it complicates matters of the sort of infidelity by making Steve, who's the guy she's cheating on her husband with, like kind of like he plays tennis with Vic, Donna's husband. So like he's a known person in the family a little bit. So it makes that sort of betrayal extra and just helps with the kind of condensing things. But it kind of intensified things a little bit. I thought it was a nice touch. And similarly, like they're able to do, I don't know, it's like basically the husband drives by and sees Donna and Steve on the street, like from afar, from the car. he sees that there's some kind of weird thing, and that's like his suspicion. Then the next scene, it corresponds a little bit more to something in the book. I don't know. They do a nice job where they do deviate of condensing things, I think. In fact, I guess I can't remember the script writer who, I could probably find out from the video box. But so
I can be doing IMDb while you're talking.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So the screenplay, probably Lauren Currier. I believe she wrote a pretty good adaptation when they decided to go back to the book, but she followed a lot of the subplots and all that, but she took a lot of the dialogue right from the book. But it was just too long. So she decided she did not want to be the one to edit it down. So they brought in someone, and I think a lot of the things that they did to condense things were actually more effective. So she did a great job, and then someone came in to help kind of whittle down, just basically edit down the work that she did to bring it back to the book. But so I have this note about the Tad surviving, the boy surviving at the end. It really also plays off of if you're familiar with the novel and you're expecting him to die, it does seem like that could happen. Like
yes,
it's basically just at the last moment that he doesn't. And so that came from the initial Stephen King draft.
Because he has asthma, right? Or something that like
there's
prevents
something
him
about
from
the heat and
breathing in the heat. And
yeah, they don't completely explain the medical, or if they probably do, and I just kind of shut down. But it's not like they establish he has asthma or anything like that. But there is a scene where she's like in the book and in the movie where the mother's trying to like keep the kid from.
I remember him like hyperventilating, like he's like, and she's like trying to get him to calm down and like,
yeah. And in the book, like basically, there's times where she's trying to get the courage or decide that she can actually make it to the house without being killed by the dog, and thus leaving her son to be killed by the dog. And at a certain point where she does decide that she needs to make that attempt, and she does ultimately like kill the dog and survive, Tad, her son, has passed away from whatever that other stuff was, another bout of it in the meantime.
And the implication, if I remember right, the implication also in the book is like she has rabies now because she right, like because
she does actually. Yeah, and I think at least as far as the book takes it, she does survive, and she and Vic, her husband, decide to like stay together and try to make a go of it.
Right,
but you don't necessarily know what happens. But Stephen King told his biographer evidently that this is the one novel of his that he would rewrite and he would change that ending.
Oh wow,
that was kind of interesting. Wow. I thought it was super well directed by a guy I'd not really heard of before, Louis Teague. And he went on to make one other movie with Stephen King called Cat's Eye, which I that was a rough
one. That's like an incestual like.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, it's weird.
But what he described it as stringing together a bunch of the short stories in Night Shift through some sort of narrative device, which that seemed interesting to me. But probably good to know that not to expect too much.
Yeah,
Drew Barrymore's in this.
I need to watch that one again. What is that called?
Cat's Eye. I think it came out in 1985.
Oh, no, I'm so mistaking two different projects. Cat's Eye is awesome. That is nothing incestuous about that. Cat's Eye is really good.
Excellent. Yeah, it's interesting because that one like is an adaptation of.
I think is what that's called.
Oh, okay. And I think that's probably that era where it's maybe less faithful, like Lawnmower Man and stuff.
Yeah.
But so I realized too, in looking at some of the movie work through the StephenKing.com, you can kind of sort by date or various things. I was like, oh, I kind of skipped over Creep Show, or maybe I didn't skip over it in the chronology, but some sort of interesting.
I think Creep Show was like his screenwriting credits, like, not necessarily novelizations. Like
yeah, exactly. And I think it's like 90 or 82. I want to say.
I would highly recommend Creep Show for two reasons. First off, he's writer on majority of those little vignettes that are in that, and second off, he stars in one of the vignettes.
Oh, cool!
Which is he plays like this really bumbling redneck, which is great. A great one.
Yeah, so that stuff like coming up. I think in the chronology, I'm like kind of around 81-ish or something like that. So
Yeah.
so it all kind of works out nicely.
Nice.
But yeah, this dude Teague did some really cool stuff. Like the really interesting shots, different perspectives. There's just one great thing about where he dramatizes the kids. You know, he thinks there's something in his closet, and he has to sort of make it. It's this kind of small beat in the movie, but they did a lot with it where that I didn't know until I got to the behind the scenes. It just sort of had an emotional impact, which is the idea. But like he turns off the light and has to run to his bed basically before like whatever the boogeyman gets him from under the bed.
Yeah.
And so what they do in the shot to give you that effect is that there's a small room set for most of it, but for the shot where he is trying to get that space from the light switch to the bed, it's a much larger set, and he's got a long way to run.
Yeah.
So like kind of creative, dramatic things like that. There's an amazing shot where in the mother and the child have been it's after she's been attacked by the dog, but gotten back into the car where she's just kind of losing it. And they found a way to basically in this Pinto, like have a camera go 360 and start to just like spin faster and faster. And Jan de Bont figured out a way with the director through some sort of reflexive lens to do that, where the rig was basically on top of the car. But yeah, like really creative direction to both emphasize like the themes of the movie, but also to make like basically a one set thing of like people trapped in a car. Pretty interesting.
Make use of such a small space. That's the thing to consider.
Yeah.
Is like the Pinto is not a big car. First off, that's part of the like oppressive nature of the situation. Is like it's a small car, and the majority of this movie, the majority of the tension of this movie takes place literally in the front seat of that car. You know, and their reaction to the dog while they're in the front seat of that car. I remember like because a lot of the book and the movie plays out as this like war of attrition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Cujo is waiting them out because he knows like there's some like there's almost that there is where the supernatural aspect plays in, is where like there's this almost like knowing of they can't just stay in that car. There's gonna be a reason that they're gonna have to come out of that car.
Whether and it feels like some sort of
thirst or
the thing.
And it just this great use of space. I like one of the scenes that stands out in the movie, which again I haven't seen it in so long, but like it's like on day 2 in the movie, and he's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. I gotta pee, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, let's just open the door a crack and you're just gonna pee outside real quick. And it's like there's been enough lull in the movie that Cujo hasn't attacked, and you're like, you're just as invested as they are, like, okay, we have long enough that this poor little kid can piss, right? And it's the second they open the door, like it's like terror again, you know, like it just like ramps it back up again, and just oh man, really well done, really great. And man,
I have this note too, like where the book was based on, which I had heard but forgot. Stephen King kind of got the idea from having a similar experience going out to get his motorcycle fixed from like a backwoods mechanic in Maine who had this ominous looking dog, and then he kind of imagined that scenario basically that that we're describing, like what if you were like stuck there and that dog was rabid basically.
And this is me just tying it back to Castle Rock, Bannerman, Dead Zone. This is the scene that created, like, there's another scene in the Dead Zone that created where he's the door-to-door Bible salesman, and there's the dog in the dooryard of the Dead Zone that comes out and attacks him, and that's what creates who's the guy from the Dead Zone that like is Trump essentially? Stilson. Remember, he's the Bible salesman, and like he
that
like
could be the Camber's farm in a way.
like none of the family's there, but there's the dog is there, and like he has that altercation with the dog again. Like another
Oh,
parallel
yeah.
that like happens, you know?
Oh, that's very interesting, actually. That had definitely not occurred to me. That's cool. The director was talking about real and imagined fear. What was that thing you were talking about in terms of the cannibal and the cannibalize? This
Um,
versus this, or it
Fear
seized
versus
upon.
opportunity. Am I
Yeah.
going to
So
be
this
afraid
is.
of this, or am I going to see the opportunity in the situation? You know?
Yeah, yeah. And this director felt that this whole thing was like about real and imagined fear. So Donna, the bored housewife, she's kind of fears growing old and she wants to be, she likes that she's desired by this this young guy in town, poet or whatever, tennis guy. And then her husband fears for financial security. Tad, their son, is sensing the tension in the house and is imagining. Then that's kind of manifesting in his fear of this imaginary monsters in his closet. But by the end, they're unified as a family by this very real fear of death.
Yep.
And so it puts everything into perspective. All of those imaginary fears, as the director is saying, both for the characters, but a lot of our stuff in life is often things that we cook up and stew in our own brain. And so at the end of the book, and the family does kind of stay together, what's left of it, the husband and wife, but in the movie the kid doesn't die as well. So it actually ends in this freeze frame of that first moment that the father does make it. In the book, the father makes it to the farmhouse, but he's just a little bit too late and the son has died. But in the movie, like he just gets there in time, and that's where they end their story. Director said is one of it is his favorite film that he worked on because he felt he had the best possible staff working in every department.
That's awesome.
And that definitely shows. Definitely shows.
This is one of those movies. I grew up on horror movies. I grew up in a family that celebrated horror movies. This is one of those movies that is referenced a lot. I remember through life. I remember Cujo always having this like spot in our like echelon of like great horror movies. Cujo was one of those where it was just like it just kind of pegged my mom, my older sister, my brother even as like a good. It is just a great scary movie, in the sense that it's not Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees. It's really suspenseful. You can relate to the people. The premise is terrifying. I mean, again, that's a breed of dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a breed of dog that is notorious for being friendly and loyal and nice. Being imagine if that like loyal and nice and awesome breed of dog just decided, no, fuck you. Like it could do that if it wanted to, but it doesn't normally. But in this story, it does. And that's terrifying. That's what makes it terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. The last note that I had is a little bit of a jokey type thing that came from the composer, which this is a little side note jokey thing, that the notes of the theme of this movie are similar and a couple times right on for the theme in Love Actually.
Yeah.
Like if you hear them side by side, so that's a little odd in retrospect. But the composer said that he thinks about Cujo as the story of a dog done in by two bats. First the animal that gives it rabies, and then the bat that ultimately is used to kill the dog. I was like, oh, that's kind of. I wonder if that was intentional, kind of thing.
Well, and you know what? That's 100% accurate because even in the book, Cujo is celebrated as like this amazing loyal dog, right?
Yeah, he's definitely like you're not afraid of him after that first visit, and of course as the audience too, things are going to go south. But initially, he's described his inner thoughts or all this noble thing,
But even like every character that is killed by Cujo in the book Cujo can't believe they're being killed by Cujo. I remember even Bannerman was like, no, I know this dog. Oh, that's just Cujo. That's the,
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. He was sort of
You know.
notorious as a good dog.
as a good dog. And that's kind of what allows him to just like take out as many people as he does, is because they have this like false sense of security with him as being a good dog,
That's interesting too. Yeah.
And I mean, even so much as his owner and his like compatriot, who is his drinking buddy, essentially.
Yeah.
Don't they get taken out at the same time? Like both of them get taken out
in short succession. Yeah, those are two early victims. Yeah,
and
the first.
and it is this false sense of security of like, well, that's not Cujo. Cujo doesn't do that,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Man, that's a good
So, I mean,
story.
It was. Like, I wasn't prepared to like it as much as I did. I mean, I figured I would, but the 1-2 of the kind of book being pretty cool, and then the movie being such a wonderful extension of that was like, it was real satisfying.
So you're to wrap this up, to wrap this King Corner up before we do some shop talk, before we wrap up for the evening. Cujo, Gunslinger is next. Where does oh shit, what book was I just thinking of following that? There's one where I was like, well, where is this in the chronology? Fuck. I can't remember.
It looks like Bachman books aside, just straight novels that go Cujo, Dark Tower, Pet Sematary, Christine.
Oh, Christine, that was the one I was going to ask about. Like, where is it? Because I think that one is one that you're really going to like too.
I watched that movie as part of the John Carpenter when I was going through John Carpenter's films a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
really cool.
One of his great ones. That film is great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Really good.
I think it was one of the things that made me want to do the Stephen King thing.
Yeah, and that's that's in that series of like great adaptations made by like early in the careers of great directors. Like, well, here's a Stephen King book, make that in a movie. And Christine was one of those that I feel like John Carpenter did a great job of synthesizing the essence of that story and making it work in a film that I feel like we went through 30 years or 20 years at least of Stephen King adaptations of not getting that before we got to this good batch that we're in right now.
Renaissance.
Yeah. So yeah, Christine, I'm interested for you to go through that one and see what your takes are on that.
Yeah, me too. It's funny, the Dark Tower, the next like proper King book after The Running Man, it will be the first where there is no like worthwhile adaptation to check out.
Yeah.
I think I'll just
I mean, not all of them have it, especially when you start getting into the 90s, like the work that he wrote in the 90s, a lot of that does not have adaptations, or the adaptations have are poor. They're not good.
Right. Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see your take through all that.
Yeah. But this was a fun one, and this was an incredible King Corner. Yeah. Thanks.
Man, shit. I got to start working on the treatment for the Cannibal and the Cannibalized. I like that title.
Yeah, that's a really strong, like, that's a really strong project. It's been fun.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 beers. I've had. 10 beers.
Wow, nice work.
Here, I'll take a picture.
Yeah. This is the fuel that birthed the Cannibal and the Cannibalized.
Listen, that movie's gonna fucking break records.
Well, that movie's. It sounds like it's been in your head too for a while.
Those are the best movies, right?
Like, yeah. Well, yeah. They're bursting to get out.
They fester, and like I've always said, like J.R.R. Tolkien, he had to write those books because he would have gone crazy with that world. Like he has an entire universe in his head, just like Stephen King. He has to write or else he would go fucking nuts. Imagine all those ideas in his head. You know, I'm just now reaching the point where I have to create this stuff or else I'm going to go fucking nuts.
And that is absolutely the best stuff.
Yeah.
That's why it's exciting.
Yeah.
And you actualize a lot of it tonight, I feel like.
Yeah,
so
like
you're pretty,
man.
You got a great start on it.
Yeah, so I'm interested to listen to this sober and dive in from there. So yeah, I think we're good. I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, me too. I make those MP3s to make my little editing notes anyway, just to figure out like, oh, here's where we had a pee break, or here's where we diverged for something that was not necessarily. So I'll make that for myself, and then I'll share it with you as well.
Yeah, that'll work, man. That sounds great.
Man, this was spectacular.
So good. So just like every fucking time where it's just like, man, it's just so refreshing and fun to be done. And like at the end of it and just be like, God, that was a great conversation. So
surprising too, where things go like Cannibalized. Never would have guessed in a million years that would have been.
Yeah. I mean, and that was just like I see this movie where Twinkie's pursuing me through the desert with a crowbar. And like, that's exactly, that is the movie I visualize in my head. Like,
yeah. And that had come up before. So it was really cool to hear it like fleshed out more.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk to Twinkie about it sometime.
Absolutely. So awesome. All right,
well, thank you so much. I'm be able to sleep much more soundly having had this experience.
Good. Man, have a great evening. Freshen up the bride for me. And I love you, man. This is
I love you also.
I tell you what, man, this is like Ash was the other night. She was like, you should just like find a cheap plane ticket and go out to Minnesota. Like, I was like, yeah, I should do that. So,
and I love that idea that Sean threw out in the middle of nowhere. He's like, is there a way we can all like be together? I'm like, that seems like a good idea.
Yep. I
mean, obviously things are harder, whatever. There's challenges sometimes, but it's the thing that we share and try to kind of make sure stays alive is irreplaceable. So
absolutely,
that's what it's doing.
Absolutely,
work hard to bridge the gaps and whatever that song says.
yeah, the sunscreen song.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
all right, so we'll
take all these cans downstairs and put them in the recycling, and then order some pizza. So
I support that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, buddy. I love you.
Take care.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Absolutely. All right, take care.
Long walk, short drink. Long walk, short drink. You've taken that long walk, oh short drink. This was a long walk, fucking short drink.
I'll just do something. Yeah, just go ahead, act like you're gonna go call someone. It doesn't matter. Alright, go ahead and get pissed.
Okay, no. No!
Get pissed and then get sad.
Damn it. No, I didn't mean that at all. That's not what I'm talking about. I meant before. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't, Don't hang up. Don't hang up.